Hi, this is Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow with another edition of My Healthy Eating. I know that you have missed seeing me here because I have gotten really a lot of wonderful comments from you, so I appreciate that. Because as you know, whatever you put into your mouth, your body, is representative of what goes into your mind. And that's really what this is all about. So I've been talking to you about my Einkorn, and I showed it to you before. I want to let you know that this is a little kitchen scale that I have. And the reason that I got this was because I wanted to be able to better measure my Einkorn flour to make it, and that's what professional cooks do, is they weigh, because what I have found out through all of this is that a measuring cup, a cup isn't always a cup, and so forth. So if you weigh it, so I have weighed out for you 465 grams approximately of Einkorn flour. It's a little bit more, so I'm going to take some of it out, although I did allow a little bit of the bag. Okay, 465 grams of flour. Okay, a little bit goes back into the bag. Close enough. Now, the reason I did this is because the recipe actually calls for 3 3/4 cups, but when I measure it, it actually is closer to 3. So that's why I decided to weigh it. So in that goes into my bowl. Now the next thing I do is I have a teaspoon of dried yeast, I've talked to you about before, and then I'm going to put into my Einkorn flour. Now today we are actually going to make Piadinas, which is a very easy to make Italian flatbread that will be stuffed with spinach and cheese. It's very easy to do. I'm going to set this aside, and the other thing we're going to do is I have here a teaspoon and a half of cooking salt. That's going to go in, and then have boiling water. I need 1 cup of water. I'm going to put in approximately 1/2 cup of water. And the reason is because I want to be able to melt my salt. Now, some of you wrote in the last time that I did Einkorn flour, and you were saying, oh, the reason your bread didn't raise anymore is because you used boiling water. First of all, I only use part of it boiling to melt my salt and any other ingredient I want to melt. Then I add cooler water until I make it lukewarm. And also you want to remember, this is not regular wheat. This is Einkorn wheat. It only has 12 chromosomes versus the regular wheat has 42. So it's a completely different animal. I also want to remind you that USDA does not consider Einkorn wheat. FDA does consider Einkorn wheat. So even though there is gluten in here, most people who are gluten intolerant can handle this, myself included. Alright, so this is my now that my salt is melted, what I do is I take some room temperature steam distilled water and I add it to make about 1 cup. Which brings it to lukewarm, which is not going to kill my yeast. All right, then I also have 1/4 cup of olive oil. I'm going to put that in. And I have a little bit of organic molasses I'm going to put in, which will feed the yeast and help it to raise. Now you can also use honey. Any kind of sweetener. Of course, as you know, I'm not a proponent of agave because agave isn't really what they say it is. So I'm just going to put a little bit in here. And then all of this goes into my Einkorn flour. Now you're going to see how easy this is to do. Making bread is not difficult. It's just most people don't know how to do it, and so it seems scary. But it's not. And as I've told you before, you experiment. Some days the experiments turn out, some days they don't. For me, too. So it's a process of learning. It's okay. usually things are relatively edible. You may not want to make it again. Okay, you can see how easily the einkorn mixes up. Now the einkorn handles differently again than the normal flour that you get out of your store, whether it's whole wheat or whether it is white flour. It's a very, very soft dough. I've experimented with kneading it and not kneading it, and generally speaking, it doesn't make a lot of difference in how the dough acts or reacts. So it's very, very soft. And again, the gluten content is very low, but it does have some gluten. You can see it's kind of nice and shiny. Once we've got all this together, then all I do is cover it with a cloth, set it in a spot in my kitchen that does not have a lot of draft, and then I'm going to come back and check it in an hour. So I'll see you in an hour. Okay, this has been sitting for an hour, so you can see it has risen a little bit, not a whole lot, because it's not going to. It's not really the kind of recipe it is. But all I'm going to do is kind of mush it back down, flip it over, so the top is a little crusty. I'm going to let it sit for another hour and cover it back up and put it in a nice draft-free corner of my kitchen. And while this is happening, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make a fantastic, absolutely delicious, scrumptious chocolate fudge cake. Okay, now while our Piadina is raising, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our delicious chocolate fudge cake, which is gluten-free and flourless. So over here, we're going to take 1 stick of butter or 1/2 cup of butter, and we're going to melt this in our pan. And then, once this is melted, I'm going to remove it from the heat, and we're going to put in well, this is melting. Let me show you. We have, again, I like to use the 88% chocolate bars. I'm going to use approximately 8 ounces, and you can choose any chocolate that you like, but this is the one I like. So I'll set this one aside while this is melting. As soon as the butter's melted, then I'll just add the chocolate in. Okay, while that's happening, I'm going to make this in the food processor. Now, if you have a mixer, you can do it that way too. And we'll use that particular blade. But we're going to wait for the chocolate to melt first. So let's move this here. We're also going to add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla in. Since the butter is done, and while that's doing that, this is the steamer, which I've shown you before. You want to remember that if you don't have a steamer, you can do this in your oven about 350 to 375 with a pan of water. The steamer is going to make the cakes very, very moist. And also, if you have a steamer, you want to remember, this happens to be a 2-layer one. You want to get it to a good boil. And regardless how much of the steamer you use or you don't use, you must always keep it together, because the wood shrinks and expands depending upon if it's warm or if it's cool. And if you take it apart and it shrinks or expands all on its own, your whole steamer may not work. So if you decide to get one, you want to be sure that you always keep it together for heating and for cooling. Butter is coming along here. The water is starting to boil. A nice steamer. And this is a very quick cake to make. It's excellent, very delicious, very thick, very rich. It's good warm. It's good cold. It's good no matter when. And I use my steamer for a variety of things. I made the sweet potato biscuits for you recently. And when I did that, I baked them in the oven, and sweet potatoes have a tendency at high heat to burn. So I also put them in my steamer to try it that way, which turned out really nicely. Okay, the butter's melted, so we're just going to take it over here. I'm going to put in my chocolate, again about 8 ounces chocolate, whichever kind you like. 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Just going to melt that down. Now while I'm stirring this, I want to also show you here, I have these little Pyrex cups that I'm actually going to steam the bread in, and I put in a cupcake wrapper. This makes approximately 10. If you have glass bowls, you want to make sure that they are oven proof, because otherwise they're going to shatter. The other thing that you can do, if you don't have a steamer, if you have a pasta pot with a steamer, you can put a couple of inches of water in that, and those couple of inches of water, bring that to a boil, and then set your steamer basket in, and then you can put your little cups in if you want to steam that way. Okay, my water's boiling, so I'm going to turn it on. I want to keep it at a good boil. If you don't keep it at a good boil, it's not going to cook. Okay, so the chocolate is melted. This is going to go into my food processor. Okay, and along with the chocolate, the butter, and the vanilla, I'm going to put in about a half a teaspoon of salt, or not a half, I think I'll make it about a quarter of a teaspoon, but you can do as much as you like. Okay, I have the coconut sugar, which you've seen before, 3/4 of a cup. That's going to go in, and I'm just going to blend that together for a couple of minutes. Once that's done, eggs go in. You can see how nice and rich the batter is. Now remember I told you to break your eggs apart one at a time and not put them in case you have a bad egg. So here we go. And this we're actually going to blend together about 4 minutes. And you can do this with a hand mixer, but this will make it really thick. You'll see when it's done. Okay, I'm going to open this up, and I have here 3 tablespoons of almond meal, which I made in my little spice grinder. You can also use any other kind of flour that you want, but this will make it gluten-free and basically flourless, just a little almond meal. Give it some texture. I've done it with Einkorn flour. You can do it with millet or buckwheat, any kind of flour that you like. So let's put this on, and we're going to finish running this for a total of 4 minutes. Okay, 4 minutes are up. Let's take a look at how nice this batter is. Turn my timer off. You can see it's very nice and thick. So I have my 10 cups sitting here. Just going to go ahead and fill it. Now if you want, you can put it in the refrigerator for a little bit of time. And that will help to thicken it, but it's already in a really nice state of batter. So I'm going to put it in like this. And as I said, it makes approximately 10. Okay, here we go. We've got just about everything filled up, evenly divided amongst the 10 little cups here. And you can make them as large or small as you want. I try and keep them pretty much uniform because they'll cook uniform that way. And you want to put them in your steamer approximately 10 minutes, perhaps 15. And I have explained to you before about the steamer. Remember the steamer, that steam burns. So again, when you open it up, be sure you use your hot mats. I'm just going to put 3 in here in the bottom. And then I'll put my next layer on. And I'm going to kind of alternate it so it's in the open spaces of the 3 that are below. And we're going to let this steam. We're going to check in about 10 minutes and see how it's doing, but it may need as much as 15. It just kind of depends. Okay, now while the cake is steaming, we're going to go back here to our piadina. And it did rise a little bit more, like I told you that it would. And it's going to go onto my little cutting board. And I'm going to make, let's see, I'm going to cut this into equal portions. I'm not sure yet if that's how many that's going to be. So let's take a look here what we've got. Okay, so 3 this way. Yeah, I think we're going to get about 12. Depending on how big you want them, you could actually get 16, but we're going to do 12. And you can roll this out. You can press it between wax paper. I happen to have a tortilla press that I like to use to do mine. These are about $15. They're not too expensive. A very handy tool to have. Take a piece of wax paper, one of my pieces of the bread dough, I put it in between, and all you have to do is squish it down, and you have your piadina ready to go into your pan. So let's do a couple of them. So they're a little smaller, but that's all right. Put that in, just squish it down. And let's do one more, just for fun. You can see how easy it is. Now, while you're working with your bread dough, you can either, sometimes what I do is I just make maybe a half a dozen of them for one meal, and I put the bread in a container like I have my cheese, and I put it right into the refrigerator and just leave it for the next day. But if you're going to make a lot of them, it will dry out, so you might want to take a piece of plastic wrap and just cover it up so that it don't get too dry. Alright, now we take the piadina over here. I have a non-stick skillet. We're going to turn it on a medium, hide it till it gets warm, but then a medium heat. I'm going to take this off. Get it into our skillet. And once it starts cooking, I'm going to put in a little bit of the spinach and cheese, and that's it. You can put in other fillings if you like. If your filling has too much moisture in it, then the issue is that it's going to soak through on your piadina. You can see mine sticking a little bit. It's really better if that you press it and you take it right out, but I waited a few minutes, that's okay. And it'll start to cook here pretty soon. And just go ahead and get these others started. The other thing you can do is put these in the refrigerator like this, because when they're stiff they'll come off of the wax paper a lot easier. Once they get warm, then you have another issue. This one's... Let's see if this is warm enough to move over a little bit. Yeah, no, it needs to cook a minute longer. You can also use these as they are for little pizza crusts. They're a lot of fun. Wait on this one so I can get moved over a little. Alright. There we go. You can use it as a tortilla. What I like to do is then take the spinach, actually cheese first. I don't have any oil, it's just on the surface. And I'm just going to move that over a little bit. And let that cook and then flip it. Let's see if this one's ready to come off. I'll try the other one, Jonathan. See if this one will come off a little easier. Like I said, sometimes you just have to work with it or redo them or make them not quite so thin. That will also make a difference. Get your wax paper off. Coming along really nicely. I'm going to flip it so we get it cooked well on both sides. A little bit of cheese on this one. And a little bit of spinach. Fold it over. There we go. And let it cook and let your cheese melt. You can dip it in a pizza sauce if you like. You can eat it as is. You can cut it into wedges and serve it. But it really is a really nice side dish to go with any meal. And while that's finishing up, let me check on our steam bread here. And this is going to about 10 minutes, so let's see, it may need another 5. Oh yes, it needs to cook a little bit more. So we'll do it about another 5 minutes. Get that little corner done. Make sure all our cheese is melted nicely. And there you have it. So the piadinas are done. They're really beautiful. I'm going to set them over here. And we will check on our steam bread in just a minute. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look. Okay, they look done. We'll test it with a toothpick. Yeah, toothpick comes out clean. So those are done. Let's take out top one. Bottom one. So really, really rich. It's almost more of a candy than a cake. It's fabulous. Okay, here's the other ones. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to put these last 4 into cook. One on the bottom. And these last 3 up here. While that's happening, let's take a look and see what we have. And what I do is I just turn it upside down like this. I'm going to put it here and peel it out of its cupcake wrapper. I can see how thick that is. It's really nice. And look at that. It's like one of the molten cakes that you get at the best fancy restaurants that you can find with excellent ingredients. You can make a sauce over it like a ganache, which of course it doesn't need, but you can do it. You can use whipped cream over it. You can use a scoop of ice cream or gelato. So whatever you like, but it really is a fabulous, fabulous, like I said, it's a fudge cake, almost more like a candy. It's delicious. So with that, I would like to thank you for joining me, Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow at expansions.com. Until next time, eat healthy, have fun. Bye-bye.